Hi, I am Vybhavi Adiga, a senior clinical psychologist at Amaha, Bangalore. In recognition of World Mental Health Day on October 10th, I am here as a part of Amaha's initiative to raise awareness about mental health. This week, we are focusing on the theme of active listening. First question. I want to be fully present when someone is sharing their feelings with me, but I find myself mentally preparing a response instead of truly listening. How can I shift my focus to better understand their emotions rather than just offering a reply? Many of us aren't accustomed to having open conversations about emotions. So, when a loved one shares about their emotional experiences, it can be hard to know what to say or do. Often, we mentally prepare a response because we feel the pressure to be helpful or useful. This can also bring about feelings of guilt, the idea that we should know the right thing to do or that we aren't doing enough to support them. For some, discomfort with negative emotions may create a desire to fix the situation or remove these feelings altogether. However, it's important to remember that the goal of listening isn't to provide the perfect response, but rather to stay present and share space with our loved one as they navigate through their emotions. Reflecting on why we feel a need to prepare a response can really shift our focus back to the other person's feelings and perspective. Good active listening would involve paraphrasing and asking open-ended questions. For example, saying, I hear you. It sounds like you're having a tough day. Or you sound really frustrated. Is that how you're feeling? These kinds of questions can invite deeper conversations and show that we are truly attuned to the other person's experience. Second question. I realized that I sometimes get defensive when people share how they feel about my actions, which shuts down the conversation. How can I stay open and listen without feeling attacked or criticized? Open conversations are crucial for building healthy relationships, but they can be challenging because we often feel blamed or criticized. This is where self-reflection becomes very essential. What triggers our defensiveness is an important question to ask. When receiving critical feedback, it's very easy to internalize it as a personal flaw. However, it's very important to distinguish between criticism of a specific behavior and criticism of who we are. We can reduce defensiveness by acknowledging the other person's feelings without jumping to blame or without justifying our actions. Practicing self-compassion also helps remind us that everyone makes mistakes and it's okay to learn and grow. In emotionally charged conversations, I find it hard to stay calm and empathetic. When I feel triggered by what the other person is saying, how can I maintain my composure and focus to truly listening, even when the topic is difficult? It's completely natural to feel triggered during emotionally charged conversations. After all, we're only human. If a conversation becomes overwhelming, we don't need to pressure ourselves to maintain perfect composure. It's okay to take a pause and let the other person know that we'll return to the conversation once we've had a chance to ground ourselves. Grounding can be as simple as taking deep breaths, visualizing a calming scene, or becoming aware of our surroundings. I sometimes struggle to recognize the unspoken emotions behind the words people say. How can I improve my ability to pick up on the nonverbal cues and listen better? To start, we can observe body language, such as facial expressions, posture, gestures, as well as listen to the speaker's tone of voice to understand their emotions better. Practicing mindfulness can help us stay present and focus on both the speaker's words and their emotional experience. Another key aspect of active listening is showing genuine curiosity about the person's perspective. We're only human and can't expect ourselves to read someone else's mind, so it's perfectly okay to take time to learn more about the other person. Asking thoughtful questions to understand how they're feeling allows us to deepen our connection And over time, it helps us become more attuned to their emotional state. I realize that I don't always validate the emotions of others, especially when I don't agree with their perspective. How can I express empathy without feeling like I have to agree with everything they're saying? Validating someone's feelings doesn't mean you have to agree with their perspective. You can acknowledge and validate their emotions without judgment, even if you disagree. The goal is to understand and support them, not to win an argument or prove a point. Even if your opinion feels valid or right, it's okay to hold back and not share that in the moment. Later, when the time feels right and when you're having an open, calm discussion, you can always share your thoughts. It's important to remember that when someone is struggling, their experience is valid. There is no right or wrong, especially when it comes to emotions. Your role here is to acknowledge that what they're feeling is real for them and they have every right to feel it. Emotions are deeply personal, and while they may not reflect your perspective, they are significant to the person who is experiencing them. I struggle to listen empathetically when I feel emotionally drained myself. How can I manage my own mental health while still offering genuine support and attention to others when they need to talk? It's important to remember that we cannot give what we don't have. If we want to offer love and compassion to the other person, we must first cultivate self-compassion and a healthy relationship with ourselves. Taking care of our own emotional and mental well-being is crucial. This means practicing self-care regularly, whether it's through relaxation, hobbies, or doing activities that help us recharge. Setting healthy boundaries is another aspect of self-care, especially when we are consistently an active listener to another loved one. When we're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to limit the time we're spending listening to others. We can't be there for others when we are running empty. Boundaries are not about shutting people out, but it is about ensuring that we have enough emotional space to be present for the other person and ourselves. A healthy boundary could look like saying, "Hey, I need a break right now, but we can talk about this later when I can give you my full attention." Another important part of self care, especially when we are a primary caregiver, is identifying when we need help ourselves. This can also make us more equipped to show consistent care to our loved one. My partner is going through a tough time, and I'm not sure how to get her to open up about her struggles. It can be really hard to see a loved one struggling, but inviting them to have a conversation can be a helpful start. You can first start by making a gentle observation, such as, "I've noticed that you seem a bit upset lately," and then inviting them to share if they feel comfortable. It's important to communicate that you're only offering a safe, non judgmental space where they can talk and that you're always there to listen and actively support them. At the same time, remember that they may not be ready to talk, and that's okay. They may have their own reasons for not opening up, and your role is to simply let them know that you're there for them when they're ready. You can also lay out different options by letting them choose what feels best for them, whether it's talking to you, confiding in another friend, or reaching out to a therapist. Additionally, offering small, manageable acts of kindness can also communicate that you show care. They don't have to be grand gestures, but something as simple as offering to have a cup of coffee with them or go out for a walk with them can build trust over time and create a safe space for them to eventually open up to you. Whenever I talk to my partner about how I feel, they interrupt or offer solutions, but I just want to be heard. How do I ask them to listen more empathetically? You need to be heard without interruption is completely valid, and it's important to communicate that. You have every right to ask for what you need, and this is an example of assertive communication. Using I statements can help you express how someone's behavior affects you without sounding like you're accusing them. The goal isn't to blame yourself or the other person, but to strengthen the relationship through clear communication. A good way to approach this is in stages. Start by setting context. For example, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about. Is it a good time to talk? Then make a neutral observation without placing blame. For example, during our conversation at lunch, I noticed I was being interrupted when you were offering solutions. Next, share how it made you feel. Continuing the example, that made me feel unheard and frustrated. Finally, express what you would have preferred otherwise. Again, continuing the example, I would have appreciated it if you had listened to me and reflected on my feelings rather than jumping into solutions. After you share this with your friend or your partner, you can open this to another discussion. You can ask and open a question like, how does this sound to you? Do you want to talk more about this? I think that this can build more trust and strengthen communication. Remember that you have to be patient, and altering listening behavior can take time. I find it hard to listen without giving advice, but I know that sometimes people just need to vent. How can I stop myself from jumping in with solutions and focus on being an empathetic listener? Advice itself isn't inherently bad, but the issue arises when it's unsolicited. If advice isn't what the other person is looking for, it falls flat and can feel irrelevant. We may offer advice with the intention of helping or bringing about change, but it can sometimes have the opposite effect, especially if the person isn't ready for it. Advice is only truly effective when the other person is actively seeking it. To avoid this, practice mindful listening and resist the urge to immediately offer solutions. Instead, focus on empathy. Try to understand and validate the other person's feelings. You can also ask them what they really need in the moment. For example, do you want advice or would you prefer that I just listen? This way, you're offering support in a way that's most meaningful to them, and it helps us create a more open and supportive environment.